Hello, welcome YouTube. This is Gooner Thoughts, and this is one that I think everyone on the panel, and I think everyone in the world, other than people who we're probably addressing, cannot believe this is something we've got to talk about in the 21st century. We shouldn't be talking about it anyways, but the fact that we're having to um, is just embarrassing for football, for humans, just for everyone. And obviously, I am going to bring the panel in and let them introduce themselves. But this topic is going to be about discrimination, racism, and abuse that we're seeing on social media and in football in general. Is there a solution? Is there an actually viable solution that can be put out to the FA or to football or UEFA to really get racism out? Because it shouldn't be a problem in today's day and age. We don't choose our skin color. It's not like we go on a character selection before we're born and then pick what skin color we want to be, how we want to look, how our eye color is going to be. It's something that you're born with. You can't change it. So why is it something that's so controversial? But I am going to bring the panel in now, and obviously I'll let them introduce themselves. Going with Niall first.
Yeah, so I'm Noel. I'm a Argyle fan. Used to be a referee as well, so sort of seen quite a bit in terms of like that side of things.
And then there's Tom in this one as well. This is the first time him being here. Do you want to introduce yourself there?
Yeah, mate. Obviously, Tom, and I'm a Liverpool fan. I've seen a lot of this thing, and it's disgusting that we've got to talk about it in this day and age.
And then we've got Steve with us today. Obviously, it's his debut on the channel as well.
Hi, mate. Yeah, it's Steve. Another Liverpool fan. I've been involved in the game at the semi-pro level. I've seen racism firsthand on the pitch, in the changing room. You're quite right, 21st century. These conversations shouldn't happen. But unfortunately, where we are right now, they've got to happen because we've got to wake up to what's going on and make society make a change. It's not just football, it's society. But we'll talk about that as we go on anyway.
And then obviously we've got quite a regular on the channel, which is Aaron from one half of DN5.
Yeah, as you said, I'm just one half of my channel. But firstly, Sols, I just want to say thank you for having me on again. And also thank you for hosting what should be an important discussion for not just only, the people in football, but for people around the world. So yeah, just thank you for hosting that discussion. And I'm really looking forward to talking with everyone on here.
Yeah, and I do want to put a disclaimer out there because obviously what's going to be talked about can be a little bit controversial. I do want to emphasize, please keep this in context and don't try and clip things to make people look bad, because at the end of the day, there's going to be things said, and probably even from myself, there's going to be questions asked which people may not appreciate. But the problem is when you've got such a problem of this magnitude, questions now, especially when we've had Kick It Out, Say No to Racism and BLM, all being massively influenced in the Premier League and in football in general, and that's done nothing for it. We have to start asking the serious question, and yes, it's going to be controversial, but it has to be done, because if we never know, one person could come with the idea that changes the outlook of a lot of people. Obviously, I don't want to be bringing too much people into it, but there was Turkish who posted a picture of his live stream, someone called Judy, who posted that their family is very EDL and very sort of racist, and that's how she was brought up. Obviously, that's her words, not mine. And she said that when watching platforms such as AFTV, like the Football Terrorists, etc., they started to see people come together, and that really deprogrammed her. And that's basically what I'm here to do. Obviously, I'll be hosting, so there will be a little bit of my opinion in it. But what I do want to kick off with is one of the biggest things that's come out on social media: Twitter not backing the anonymous. They want to keep anonymous users on their platform, and that, for me, the reason why I want to start off with that is because that is what fans, everyone on Twitter is saying, that needs to go first. And we need to start either separating it where we have people who have verified themselves, and that's all, the person can select it in the settings to say people who've verified themselves can see my content and comment on it. And people who haven't done that, so you can that creates a solution, but obviously that's not the ultimate goal of what we're here to do. But obviously what I'm going to do is pass it over to Niall, and he can have his thoughts on what he thinks of this new Twitter thing coming out.
I don't understand why they're against it, because at the end of the day, right, I don't have my last name on my Twitter, but if only the authorities or the Twitter Twitter people could see that, and I've verified it. What's the actual problem about it? Because if you have a problem about it, then it questions what you're using your social media for, right? Because if you're afraid that Twitter or the government or the police can see who you are on Twitter or Facebook or wherever, then it makes me question what on earth you're using social media for, right? Because at the end of the day, we've all seen the abuse come out recently towards numerous players, and it's disgusting. It's absolutely vile. And for Twitter not to make a stand, because Twitter could be making a huge stand right now and going, we will not accept this on our platform. This is what we're going to do about it. If Twitter don't do something about it soon, then I've heard that you could be having fines of 2 billion or something ridiculous given to you. That needs to happen quickly, because until these social media companies, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, realize that they actually have to do something, then nothing will ever change. Because until then, people are still able to hide behind a screen, type abusive things, and say incredibly disgusting and degrading things to other people. And it's totally just, it's not acceptable, and Twitter needs to do something.
Or were you going to say something, Aaron, there? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to go next just because I've actually written a few papers around this topic. And the problem is when we start talking about attaching our official documentation to our social media sites, you don't just open a discussion for football. You're talking about a discussion that's worldwide, that actually has a lot of problems. So let's say you're from England, attaching your documentation to a Twitter site isn't actually a big deal. But if you're from a country, from an oppressive regime, attaching your documentation onto a social media site can really have harmful effects on you. If you're somebody who tweets something or you're advocating to free yourselves from oppression from your government, then attaching your social media to official documentation can actually lead to trouble and actually really death at some sorts of time. So that's actually the argument against putting a face or documentation onto your social media sites, because you need to forget, if you're talking about that discussion, it's not just about football. You're talking about worldwide. You're talking about people that maybe have nothing to do, with this kind of discussion right now. And I think that is a pathway where, in theory, it's good to go down. But I actually think is completely unrealistic. I don't think it would ever happen and would have a major backlash, because I think most people do not want their information specifically attached to their social media sites, just because of the data protection between society and the government, and especially platforms like Twitter and Facebook, who have been proven to use our data in completely the wrong ways from what we want. So that's one of the big reasons. But I think if we're talking about, there's no clean fix, because like racism online, let's say you do that, well, it's still gonna completely exist as kind of like in forms of ideology and in forms of like what we see in the football grounds. So it's much deeper than just online. If you get what I'm trying to say, it's not just online. It's ingrained into a lot of parts of our society.
100%, and you know what? I kind of do second that, because I do study business technology with law, surrounding obviously social media and just general online activity, and that's the biggest one that I've always said is it's to do with data protection more than anything. And the problem is when even the Data Protection Act was actually outdated, and it took them nearly 15 years to actually redo it to make it into modern day society. And you're right. What if you are in an oppression? What if you're wanted by a country for no reason other than maybe freeing people? 100%.
Or you could be, you obviously could be, identify as a different sexuality or something like that, and that shows through your social media in some way that could lead to some harmful consequences for you wrongly. And that's why it's so difficult to just say let's like solve the online harassment problem, because it genuinely is so difficult. And also, credit to what Niall said, Twitter and Facebook, all of them are they are not doing enough for it, not in all forms, not just footballation, in terms of like online sexual violence, online harassment against women particularly, and men. They're not doing enough, and they are never held accountable properly for what they're doing.
I never even thought about it. I never even thought about oppressed people. That And as naive as that sounds like, that never even came into my head. And it's
There is
really
a difference. There is a difference in oppressed people that wouldn't take to social media to put thoughts and feelings on there that might be used against them. To in Western society, people abusing footballers because of the colour of their skin. There's a difference between those two things. Twitter has a moral obligation to wake up to what's going on. If you're living in Western Europe or Central Europe or you're living in the UK, you're hiding behind a VPN and you're abusing people racially, then Twitter has to act. Twitter has to stop. Countries where it's a problem, it's not a political problem, it is a social problem. They need to stop allowing people to use VPNs because it's a mask. You can pretend to be anybody you want. You can go on social media and you can abuse people. You shouldn't be able to abuse anyone. It's not just about the colour of somebody's skin. There shouldn't be discrimination. There shouldn't be bullying. There shouldn't be targeting. All of these social media. We will see social media blow up to what it is now and then completely disappear in our lifetime if society doesn't get the likes of Twitter, Facebook, all those platforms where people pretend to be somebody they're not, so that they can racially abuse or sexually discriminate somebody. I have no problem with whatever somebody wants to identify themselves as. It doesn't change my life.
Of course, yeah.
Live and let live. Where it is wrong is when a footballer misses a chance, or you saw it happening at Liverpool, makes mistakes. The amount of abuse that comes through social media towards that person has to be regulated. It really does. It's completely unacceptable. We just put something on Mars the other day. We flew something to Mars. We can invest money and look at into our future and go and spend billions of pounds putting robots on Mars. Because they get them sorted out on our planet with regards to racism and discrimination long before we even considered it.
Yeah, I think another thing with it is, I think it's a very selfish reason why I think Twitter were very much against that idea. If they were to ever suffer a data breach where hackers got onto their system, they could be sued for trillions because of multiple violations of data acts and data protection. So I think they were very much against that. But there's got to be something. There will be some method out there that can be done. Maybe your account is private and you can't message verified people until you've got like their permission or something. There has to be some way around it.
Well, I think Tom, you've just said something really good there, because I think it could be a case where you could set your account to you can only interact with other verified accounts as a verified account. So
Maybe
then
an algorithm. What about an algorithm?
They do have an algorithm now. They have an algorithm, and it just doesn't work effectively.
That's the thing, because Twitter. I remember Donald Trump. Twitter were very keen on sorting that problem out, weren't they?
That's completely for PR reasons.
Yeah, but that's the thing. They were quite happy to do that because they wanted to show themselves as, look, we've seen what's going on. We're sorting this problem. They're not sorting nothing, right? They're sorting absolutely nothing. There has to be, the algorithm absolutely needs to be better.
Do you know what the problem with an algorithm is? It's technology. It doesn't have emotion. And the problem is it's not the words, it's the context. Because things can be said that don't have to be necessarily racist. But the issue the thing is, people have put so much faith into technology. But you've got to understand it has its limitations as well. It's not a human that understands emotion. And the thing is, right, let's say, for example, calling someone a monkey could be the racist term today. But guess what? They'll start calling someone, I don't know, a dolphin and start making that a racist term. It's always catching up. And the problem that you have is how many people will always be, and I'm going to use this word lightly, but creative in the way they abuse people, because they know how an algorithm is going to work. It's very limited to its capacity, and you can only put so much into it and be so creative with like what phrases you put in. And banning words, I've always used the example of a monkey, because the word monkey actually isn't racist. It's just when you put it into the context of calling someone a monkey because they're black. And when, let's say, for example, a zoologist or a vet or someone who's passionate about animals starts to, talk about monkeys, he might just genuinely be talking about a monkey. And if we ban that word, then that kind of set. I'm just giving an example. Obviously, that there could be other things as well, but it's probably one of the easier ones to explain to people, and that's where the problem is. It's not the word; it's the context.
It's like what I said before about society above and beyond social media platforms. So we categorise crimes. When people go to court, they face prosecution, and they're convicted of a certain crime. It's about time racism crimes are categorised as well, whether they be social media, whether they be directly in the street, whether they be whatever format you choose. It's about time society looked at those and started to deal with the penalties. You know, what is there out there that is a deterrent for people to go on social media and have a go at a black footballer or an African footballer or whatever you choose, however you look at it? What deterrent is there that says if you get caught as a social media racist, you're brought in front of a judge and you face a penalty? Whether that's incarceration for a period of time, who knows? Repeat offenders perhaps. But there has to be something in place where society says, right, it's not down to Twitter, all the reasons you guys have said, it's not down to Facebook, it's not down to this, that, and the other because of data breaches and issues like that. It's down to society to say enough is enough. It's the 21st century, and somebody somewhere in a position of power has to be the forerunner of this to say this stops. It stops right now. And these are the measures that they're going to put in place to deal with it, and people need to be taken to task. It needs to be up front and centre so that it's resolved. It isn't going away. If anything, in the last 18 months or so, it appears to be getting worse.
And just building on what you said, Steve, because I think it was a good point about somebody in a position of power. So let's say lawmakers, the government, our justice system doing something. I think a lot of people were looking towards the Ian Wright situation of some type of bar, or to set the bar for punishments for people who abuse people online. And the fact that there wasn't a visible punishment of any severity, and it was very much brushed under the rug in some type of way, it was very much sympathetic or empathetic actually towards the person who was the abuser. I think that's disheartening for everybody, obviously, who's really trying to battle against racism, and for people who are black, because obviously Ian Wright is a black man. So I can only imagine the fury and the rage coming from that community because he was abused and nothing happened. So it's so disheartening for a lot of people when you want a judge or you want lawmakers to really set the benchmark for punishment and nothing happens. It makes it seem kind of, is there any hope out there for it to happen? So I think some people need to take some responsibility when it comes to setting a benchmark for punishments for people who choose to abuse others online, especially when it's racist abuse.
Exactly right. And the situation is that you and I could have a debate, and you might land one on me because of something I say, and it's a punch, isn't it? And in days and weeks to come, the marks of that heal will go away, and you go on and you carry on with your life. Racism cuts so deep into people's lives and does so much damage retrospectively. It's not something that you can get over in a week. It's not something you can forget in a week. And it's not something that at some point in your life you and I can sit, have a beer, shake hands and move on. It damages people for the rest of their entire being, for the rest of their life. That is why there has to be an obligation for something somewhere at some point to say, this has got to stop. This just cannot carry on. It's undermining society in every possible position you can look at. It's a daily occurrence on social media at the moment. That's the question. Who and when is somebody going to deal with that? It's a massive task. It's been brushed under the carpet for generations, and it takes somebody strong. Martin Luther King did a bit for the blacks of America. The job today is to do it for the worldwide problem. There's a much bigger problem. A party of people come together, all of the continents and say, we want to stop people present the right to their life freely and beliefs, make mistakes, and not be reformed.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, if you think about it, right, footballers have got a lot of the big footballers have got hundreds of millions of followers and potentially, definitely over millions of followers, and they feel powerless against racism and abuse. Imagine what the ordinary person must be going through. Like, they've not got a platform where they can really sit there and address this. And, to be fair, a lot of footballers are now coming out And the problem is, it's unity more than anything. You need to have a united front against this sort of stuff. And with the amount of power and influence that I say celebrities and sport influencers have, a part of me does think that they need to be doing more, because they are in a position of power, and they are in a position that can actually demand change if they truly wanted to put themselves out there. But there's clearly something stopping them. Because if, let's say, for example, these footballers took a full-on stance against racism for good, like they could go out and not play games, or they could protest, like a lot of people do when they're disagreement with their bosses or people up higher up, and that's why it becomes difficult to really think about a solution.
You know what it is, Souls, as well. So many of the solutions have barely worked, in the sense that, let's say, somebody is racist at a stadium. If you think some of the abuse is bad online, for those people who go to games, yeah, you hear some of the things I've heard, especially, I'm not going to say which club I'm near, but yeah, it's one of the bad ones. Some of the stuff I've heard is 20 times worse than anything I've seen online. So, like, let's say you get your season ticket taken away. I mean, if you're in a regular, you've got friends at the stadium, there's no way that you're not going to be able to get a ticket for a game. And for the most part, how are they really effectively going to ban you from the stadium completely?
Yeah,
It just doesn't. It's just not effective. So you can hand out those kind of bans however you like, but if they don't have the tools to really enforce it, then how does it make a difference? Because it doesn't. You're just saying that you're banning someone, but you're not enforcing it. It's like saying that I'm going to lock up a killer and then I don't even put him in prison, if you know what I mean. They need to actually not just think of solutions, because some of the solutions in theory are good. They need to practically enforce them, because without that, you have nothing. There's no deterrence.
Yeah, 100%. Like, even as we're on that topic as well, another thing that I'm going to kind of interlink into this is predominantly, obviously, with Zaha, Brentford, and I think it was it Celtic as well that have now come out and said that the whole sort of Black Lives Matter movement hasn't had the impact they believe it should have had, with obviously the knees taking before kickoff. And to be honest with you, do you not think as fans that it's becoming a bit of a, we just got to do it, rather than something that's actually symbolic and powerful?
I think one of the worst things about it is when you give exposure to these racist comments online, or when you make a stand against them. Unfortunately, while we do get the desired effect in some senses, it often reminds some of the people who are doing it that they can do it, and that there is very little punishment, and then they go and do it when it, like, in the next week, because they know that nothing bad is going to happen from it. That's where one of the issues is. That we do the right thing by exposing it, and then it causes more issues because there isn't a proper punishment.
Take, for instance, what happened with Prime. You know, what happened with Prime on his stream he was on when the lad abused him. You could find a copy of that stream for 3 or 4 days, maybe longer, after that actually happened. That should have been taken away from the public eye. The conversation about it should have carried on, but it gives the people who find it sensationalistic something to go and look for, and something to go and take interest in. You're quite right. When you leave it out there for people to see it, you leave it out there for the public eye, it does as much damage as it does good. Luckily, Prime's got a good set of friends around him that were able to support him through that, and the people that run the stream, they came through for him in terms of supporting him, and there's a lot of support from the pod community. But if you take that down the second it happens, there's no chance it can be sensationalised. What then happens is Prime's friends gather around him and put their arm around him and make sure he's okay. And I reached out to him because he's a friend of mine. And then we do what we do with the perpetrator in the background, or just it does what it does with the perpetrator in the background. It just, where you sensationalise something, you kind of, those that want to see it will go and find it, and it won't make that situation any better, has the potential to make it worse.
I think the most powerful image was Frankie de Jong and Genie Wijnaldum. I think when they stood together and put their arms together, I think that for me was one of the most powerful images you could have. I think that's a lot more powerful than taking the knee. I think look, the whole thing with taking the knee and BLM is there's so much behind it as well that the message is now completely blurred, right? It is no longer a clear message because whilst you don't have to agree with the political side of that group, the message Black Lives Matter is clear, right? Because they do, just like all lives do. But that has now been blurred so much with the politics, as it always is with anything, that is no longer a message that I think you can use because it is blurred with that organization and the political stuff. I think for me, well, I would take the knee, but I think going forward, I think there should be maybe a banner where kick it out and no room for racism. That is then shown.
Yeah,
Because
they don't shake the hands anymore, do they? So they could just hold them up instead of shaking the hands.
Yeah, like when they're all stood in front of the Premier League board and it's before they do the hands, they could literally just have a banner there that they all hold, and then everyone can get behind that message. Because no room for racism, as far as I'm aware, hasn't got a political message behind it, right? It's got we want to eradicate racism out of society. So maybe something like that would be better than taking the knee, because the whole taking of the knee is so politicized now. I think that banner would probably be a better way to go forward, because I think it was Millwall when didn't they refuse to take the knee, and instead they all joined together to hold a banner. I think going forward that needs to probably be the way that we try and do something.
Yeah, 100%. And I think also because obviously the notion of people who are slightly racist or on the border of this sort of white supremacy and stuff are going to look at it as Black Lives Matter rather than the actual message it was meant to be for unity. And it's just the words they're going to look at. They're not going to research behind. Obviously now, as you said, Niall, like it's become a very blurred message, and it's become something which it doesn't have the same impact or the same influence it probably did, because of the fact they've now started asking for donations and they've started asking for like political power, and they've started to really push for this sort of what's the word to use, like to break up the police force kind of, and all of this is just not right because it's become so politically involved. Obviously, as we're talking about the Black Lives Matter, there is another thing. This is going to be a very controversial question, but I do want to ask it because this is also a root issue to some people not backing messages and actually taking a whole U-turn. So one example I'm going to use, right, is this Arsenal and Ozil situation. And when Arsenal, when he made the comment of the Rohingya Muslims and the oppression they were going through, and the way Arsenal kind of just like freed their hands of Ozil and said that we don't want anything to do with this. And then sort of a couple of months later, they kind of endorsed the Black Lives Matter movement. Do you not think stuff like that, where they kind of go back on their words to support one movement but not another, will cause a friction within like people and cause a bigger divide? And do you think like football needs to kind of not take political stances, and maybe if they're going to back things, they need to back everything, or take a stance on kind of a united message that they come up with rather than an outsider like a Black Lives Matter movement? For example, like say no to racism is something that the Premier League kind of created, which is a no-nonsense message. It's straight there, no racism. Like I just wanted to get an opinion on that as well.
Because I've written about this actually too. What you'll find is whether it's Arsenal, whether it's Apple, whether it's a clothing brand, whether it's tech companies, a lot of these companies are used in social movements, whether it's something like a gay pride, for example, or if it's BLM, they're using it for marketing purposes. 99% of these companies do not care about equal rights, whether it's your sexuality, whether it's the color of your skin, and that's represented really through either the brand's history or what the brand does at this current time. There's numerous examples. We're obviously not going to get into that technicality here, but with the Arsenal situation, I don't like to politicize like too much, but if anybody knows anything about Chinese money in sport, you would know. If you look at the NBA, for example, there were players that were criticizing the situation in Hong Kong, and the NBA and in China, they refused to show NBA games. And then what does that mean? It cuts into companies' profits. I'm pretty sure Arsenal has some kind of financial ties somewhere in the Chinese market, and you don't want to lose the Chinese market because it represents the majority of consumerism when you look at on a per nation basis. So I don't know the complete truth behind those situations, but if I'm honest, just looking at companies, 99% of their activism is not real. It's for marketing purposes. It's to say our brand is better than theirs. We believe, come buy our stuff. If you're different or not different, but if you're whatever color of your skin, whatever sexuality, different, you come to buy our brand. But they don't believe really in that from a company, level. They don't actually believe it, and they don't really act on it. And this is something that has been observed in contemporary history.
I think you touched on it there, especially of LGBT. Marks and Spencer's made a sandwich. Trust me, I don't think that helps the situation. Getting a sandwich with, I don't even know how they tried to do it. It doesn't. That's not helpful. It's not helpful in anything, right? You want to eradicate discrimination? Don't make a freaking sandwich. That's not gonna. I'm sorry, but making a sandwich is not going to cut it's not going to cut the cloth, is it? And how Arsenal dealt with Ozil and that whole situation was frankly nothing short of a disgrace, because at the end of the day, you can't not back Ozil and then back BLM, because that is, as if they didn't back BLM, that is going to kill them. If they don't back Ozil is the problem. They can cover that up with God knows what. I think Arsenal Football Club needed to have done more, and I won't understand why they didn't. I think as M5 said about the China market, it's unfortunately money talks, and if you're gonna lose money because you're gonna back your player over a very rich country, because I think China's the second richest or third richest.
Well, Niall, for example, when COVID began. And obviously, China was one of the biggest affected countries at the beginning of the pandemic. It affected around the world commercially, in nearly all of the big commercially countries. For example, England, we rely on a lot of like the tourism from China, for example, where we didn't get that. So financial interests in that country are extremely valuable, and nobody wants to lose it because it is, it's critical for a lot of businesses. Not saying Arsenal necessarily, I don't know their demographic to that extent, but for a lot of businesses.
I know Man City are tied in with
I think the Arsenal situation is that a lot of these football clubs are not educated enough to deal with these situations. There's no guidelines in place that says to them, if one of your players makes a statement that is deemed sort of inappropriate or appropriate relating to their birthright, their religion, to all that stuff, how do football clubs deal with that? That's where the Premier League and that's where the FA have got to step in and say there's a code of conduct around those things that both the club and the player have to adhere to. That is an awkward situation for everybody to deal with. Arsenal didn't handle it very well. I think if you sat and spoke to the decision makers at Arsenal, they'd probably tell you they didn't know how to handle it. And there's your problem, because society doesn't know how to handle the monster that racism has become. And the fact that it's getting worse. So it doesn't matter what you made the point about Apple and one of those companies. You're quite right. They don't care about it. It's about money. Money is the driver for everything on the planet. If I was a football captain, Champions League final, and I've got a black player being abused, I'm taking my team off the pitch.
Yeah, completely.
That's how you get yourself noticed in high-profile games, by taking the money away from the sponsors. By saying prior to the game, we're playing against the club, there's been some problems with racism with that football club, like the England team had. They knew they were going to get racially abused last year or the year before, and they were talking about taking the players off the pitch. If I'm captain of Liverpool and Gini Wijnaldum gets racially abused, I'm taking the team off. And if you do that in a high-profile game, and it happens enough times, those people that run those tournaments, those people that finance those tournaments, and those people that use those tournaments for marketing purposes will come together and say, okay, this is a problem now, and we lost the Champions League final because of racism. That would be a story, and it's the wrong way to raise awareness, but it might be what it takes.
Yeah, I mean, I think the NBA did that last year. A lot of games ended up getting postponed by days because players would refuse to play because of the situations regarding racial inequality around the time of the George Floyd death and the Black Lives Matter movement. There were a lot of teams that were postponing games and just refusing to play because there wasn't enough being done, and it was really starting to impact teams, like impact profits.
There were even some players who completely refused to play the rest of the season in the NBA bubble due to and some of them very high profile, like Kyrie Irving, who would be, let's say, like in comparative terms, in terms of stardom, would be somebody like a Kevin De Bruyne, if you get what I'm trying to say.
And all power to them for doing that, and that's admirable, and it's absolutely the right thing to do. But we've watched four matches where it's taken place, and the players are kind of looking at each other, not knowing what to do. It's down to the sort of leaders of those clubs.
I think we need one person to do it, and then the rest will follow. I think the Istanbul Başakşehir situation this year may well be the turning point in it, because that seems to have a big impact.
What it is with obviously any problems that are deeply ingrained into society, it's not just like the players walking off the pitch. What the real issue is how do we stop that individual from ever, one, gaining those views, or if he was indoctrinated somehow, how do we stop that? Or how is he even in the stadium, if that makes sense? Because let's say we cut it out of the football stadiums, obviously this is a football discussion, that person is still going to have those views in wider life affecting other people outside of football. He could be ingrained in those views into, or she could be ingrained in those views into their sons and daughters and people around them. And that's why racism is such a difficult thing to solve, is because it doesn't just stop at the football ground. It goes into so many different layers of life. And really, what I think everybody would love to see is us getting to the real core of stopping people from ever developing those kind of views. And I don't know if we're ever really, unfortunately, going to have a solution for that, because they haven't been able to for years. And
I think we could, and it stems down to education.
Yeah, obviously that's a massive factor.
This isn't dig at anyone, but obviously I'm a bit younger, and I came through education probably 10 years ago. I can't remember being taught about racism in school. Honestly, I cannot remember. I remember being taught RE, religious education. I remember being taught all of that. At no point do I ever think I was taught about racism and the impact that can have. I think, I don't know if they've added it in now or what, but that would be a great help to at least solving some of these issues, because we're relying on these parents to teach these kids not to be racist, when, let's be honest, a lot of these people could genuinely be racist themselves. So we're expecting someone who is racist to teach their kid not to be racist. We're not doing anything in a basic of education. Like,
that's a really good point. Take years and generations to reverse that trend. So at some point, when the child goes home, sorry for cutting in there, when the child goes home, they don't face that racism and that lifestyle. So there's a consistency between home and school, and that might take 3 or 4 generations. We certainly won't see it if somebody was to put something in place now to deal with it. And I didn't go, and I'm older than you, and I didn't go to school, and I didn't study things racism. We touched on Martin Luther King for about a week in history in my final school. But the fact of the matter is, that's because they don't know how to deal with it. Because there isn't one solution that sorts out every continent, every creed, every religion. There isn't one solution that solves that. You've got to have 27, 30, 40 different solutions for all of the dynamics and all of the layers across the planet. But it can't be ignored. It's not a justification to say we shouldn't try. I think that's the problem. People are scared to try because they don't genuinely know how to deal with it, because it's such a massive, wide-reaching problem across the planet. It takes many, many different solutions to get to one common goal, and no one wants to take it on. What's wrong?
that's
one
part of the
country
problem, is trying to get the entire like globe to stick to one ruling, and like trying to like solve a problem united. I'm 22, so I'm still in education. Still, I'm in my final year of uni, and so I'm quite recent to it all. And to be honest with you, I've learned more about Victorian England than I have learned about Black History Month. That's a month, and we only have a day. And I don't know whether different schools are different, but even when I was getting taught that, you had maybe a day, maybe a couple of days, and you might have had like a fancy dress day to celebrate like Black Lives, Black History Month, but you didn't really get taught anything. You never got taught about their struggles, even unless you studied history.
You just get shown a Martin Luther King documentary on what he did and how he was a civil rights activist, and then there. I think one solution you could do is that make every child go through a week-long curriculum of all the issues that these minority groups have been through. Put them in their feet, and they'll realise they don't want that to happen. Kids are very... I don't know what the right word is, but if you can give them the correct viewpoints, they will agree. And
they're impressionable.
Yes,
Look, on the syllabus, you're never going to be able to cover everything, but I think it should be ingrained into the curriculum in every school that when you're teaching British history, you need to teach British colonial history, and with that, obviously, the mistreatment of hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people who were involved in the slave trade, and how that reciprocated into the United States, etc. Weirdly enough, my school did. Obviously, that's just because they have that in their curriculum, and I'm surprised that I know, like, for example, my girlfriend, she didn't learn about that in her secondary school, but I'm surprised sitting here that so many of you didn't, which is quite surprising to me.
It's not that I didn't learn it; it's more that they didn't really properly. Like they did, like Tom said, it's more of a, here's a documentary, watch it. Oh yeah, by the way, this also happened. It wasn't really emphasized, should I say? It wasn't like, oh yeah, by the way, the trade slave did this. This is the impact it had, and also the other thing that I also want to talk about is this sort of elitist mentality of some people are so ingrained that they don't even realize they're being racist, but they'd want to send their kids to an all white school or an all Muslim school or an all Catholic school or an all etc. And obviously the list goes on. Like, as much as I agree with that, the way I was brought up was my mum always wanted us to go to a mixed school to understand different views, because you're never going to get that. Obviously, I had my Islamic school afterwards, and I went to mosque and everything. And in school as well, like, unity doesn't really get promoted the way it should. But then again, the school I went to, we didn't really have a racist issue, to be honest. But when I went to college, that's when my eyes really opened. Because the college I went to, and this is no word of a lie, I'm not going to say the name of the college because I don't want to, get anyone in trouble or anything. But it's not the college's fault, but it's the people. And those buildings segregated. You had like a building where all the Asian people would chill. You had a building where like majority white people chilled, and you had a building where majority black people chilled. And I know it sounds horrific, but it's not like if you went there you'd get beaten up or something. It's not that bad, but it was just how naturally that happened, and like it seemed to just be so like passive, and no one really even noticed it until you really truly opened your eyes and looked. I don't know if anyone else had that.
Kind of accepted that's how it is, and that when you go there and you see that, you go with the flow, don't you? I think part of the problem in education is we're embarrassed by the problem we've got with regards to racism, and people in positions that can change that are embarrassed by it. Because they're embarrassed by it, they hide away from it. You kind of got to go completely against the trend to be the one school that stands up and says, actually, we're going to deal with this. So again, we go back to the same thing we said before. This will only stop if people in prominent positions in religion, in politics, and in government make a collective decision to stand against it. And then it might take 100 years because of the complexity of trying to deal with all of the issues. But if it takes 100 years, it takes 100 years. Who cares? The main problem is that our generations, my grandchildren and their grandchildren, I don't want to grow up in the world that I see today, the things that I've seen on social media. It's vile. We're supposed to be a race that has evolved, and an educated race that develops and takes the planet forward. It's draconian to behave like that. It really is, and it's something that it's going to take a massive movement to change it. Who does it? Where does it start? That's the first question.
Well, I think it starts with, if we'd probably all accept that the biggest and most powerful job in the United Kingdom is Prime Minister, right? Yeah, we've currently got
it's Arsenal Football Club, mate.
Yeah, we've currently got Boris Johnson, a man who has used horrific language to describe other people and other races and other religions. Horrific. Yet he's the man that is literally running the country. Now, you can stop that by not letting someone like that be prime minister or even the leader. Like, we how many top jobs are given to black people or people that are in the BAME community? Not many. They're mostly given to prominently white men. You go look at Sky or BBC. I mean, the BBC is trying to get a bit better, but it's going to be, I bet you, if you were to look in the boardroom, it's going to be predominantly middle-aged white men, because that is what they're doing. It's the way you stop it is you don't have a racist prime minister. Now, I'm not saying I personally don't agree with the Tories, but I wouldn't have a problem if the Tories had a leader who wasn't racist, because at the end of the day, that wouldn't be a problem then. It would still be a problem, but at least that problem wouldn't be there. And I think we can stem it out by sorting that out first. And then we need to look at the FA and go, well, are you going to try and be a bit more diverse? Are you going to set the standard that we see? Because we don't have many black managers or BAME managers in the Premier League, let alone in the Football League. And that I know they've done the whole, you need to interview a certain amount of people to make it more diverse. You think that's going to change anything? Do you really think that just because they are forced now to interview a person of colour, or a BAME member, do you think that's going to change anything? Because what they'll do is they'll interview them, then they'll still give it to that white man, because guess what? That's what they wanted to do initially.
And you know what, Niall? Yeah, I'm not really allowed to say what or who, but I know somebody who works in government on a BAME program. So obviously trying to promote people from higher education who are from those backgrounds into the government. And so people within management, within that branch of government, have said how lucky they are to be there, how lucky they are that you're part of the BAME community and you're here, which essentially suggests like, you're so lucky that you're of this color and you're here. It's like, it's so condescending, and it's like, if you're going to bring me here, then you have to treat me equally. You have to treat me like I belong here. Instead, by saying how lucky you are to be a part of that system, you're essentially singling them out and basically saying, you're not worth to be here. You're only here because of the color of your skin, and it's completely ridiculous. So they do some of these programs, and then they make people feel even worse, and it is a kind of different form of racism in a way.
That's just degrading them. At the end of the day, that you're going to create a program and then you're going to degrade someone for doing it. Like, at the end of the day, government needs to open their eyes and wake up. They need to smell that coffee. The FA need to do exactly the same. The Premier League need to do the same.
I think
we always look up to the top sections of our society, government, the FA, the PFA. We always look towards these people for them to set the example, for them to set the standard. We currently have a prime minister who's used racist language openly and willingly. Yet I, as a young man, am looking towards him as an example. I mean, I'm just lucky I'm not an impressionable person. But that is horrific. That's the level that we've actually got. And then you've got you're asking that man to then fix these educational issues, to put in place these things that will fix things. We're asking a man who has been racist to fix this issue, and it's absolutely amazingly disgraceful.
And you know what, Souls, you have, I know you didn't mention this, but one thing I wanted to touch on was people on social media who seem to use racist words just as kind of banter. Like, it's just so casual, and it's not even, I don't even really know if they are racist or if they really mean what they're saying, but some of the racist terms are used so casually to the point where it just seems normalized. And I think that's a massive issue. I mean, some of the things I've seen on Twitter is they're just said in a way that's I can only explain it, as I said before, as casual. It's like, something as in, when people tweet the banana emoji and stuff like that, clearly in the context of to be racist. And I just can't believe that people do it as like, it's like they're so desensitized to it that it's more of a joke. But we all know players use social media, and I know I'm prone to like call a player shit or whatever, but I think doing that so casually in a racist sense is it's kind of worrying. But I think one of the biggest positives about the discussion moving forward is the younger generation, to me, although there are obviously people using it in that way, I feel like the younger generation, like below me, I'm 23, so maybe the people who are 17, 18, even 13 or 14 now, are much more proactive in battling against casual racism or just racism in general than what my generation was and the older generation.
Yeah, 100%. And even when Steve touched on the Prime situation, is how did no one pick that up? Is another thing. Like, how did not
scared to say something because it's so far out of your comfort zone, so unexpected. If you'd have been on that, or I'd have been on that, or I'd like to think anyone in this room would have been on that, took that guy out and told exactly what you thought of him, even if it meant it was the end of the show. Who cares? That can't be accepted. It comes back to that fear factor, and it comes back to the fact that it's such a scary project for people, such a scary subject. And like you said about people being sensitive to it, that's definitely the case. But with the Prime one, I did see it, which I hadn't because it isn't nice, but everyone just sort of froze. And that is an indictment of the world we live in today when things like that happen, unfortunately. You can make that situation your problem yourself. That happens millions of times every day, all over the planet. People sit there.
And Steve, that translates into the stadium. I don't know how many games you've been to at Anfield, home park for you now. Obviously, Tom, Anfield and Souls, Emirates. Or you live in Manchester, maybe you've been to Old Trafford a few times. How many times you've heard racism in the crowd, and literally nothing is done?
Not even just racism. Words like the C word, for example. If people know what I'm talking about, I'm not going to say it, but that's got a very derogatory underlying meaning to it. I know people probably say it as banter with each other, but it does have that underlying sort of abusive manner to it, and that's the scary thing. And this is this highlights why I wanted to talk about this issue. Even if I was on this panel alone, I'd still talk about it, because it's getting people to be confident enough to talk about situations, because that's how you stop it. Because casual racism, it's funny because it's come from active racism, where people are doing it because they want to do it, to now becoming passive. That's even scarier. That's not progression. That's
because it's desensitized.
100%, and it's like people. I don't know why people are scared to talk against it, because it shouldn't be something that's done in the first place. So
well,
to stop
I do understand in some ways. Not from a view. It's just like, let's say you're at a stadium, you're alone. You hear a group of people going up to them and saying something. Obviously, I'll be honest. In some grounds in England, you would get your head kicked in if you was to really. Let's just be honest, innit? But maybe what you could do is alert a steward. But even then, it's just you're putting yourself in an extremely vulnerable situation. And I know it's not the same at all grounds in terms of football violence, but that's something that's not been.
You asked me before if I've been to games. I've been to more games than I care to remember for Liverpool.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Games, sort of the late 70s, where as a city, racism was more prevalent. Not so much now. And I don't know if you know, Liverpool's got the largest Chinatown and Chinese population outside of China in Europe. Chinatown in Liverpool is a massive area, and it's become more sort of everyday life that we live with. And the Somalians have now come and live in Liverpool as well. and we all work together, we all accept racism at Anfield isn't so much a problem. You get the odd idiot who says something stupid. Typically, people around them will check them and stop them. Liverpool, as a city, doesn't have a large racism problem in general because of the multicultural side to it. But as I said, with massive amounts of Somalians who now live in the city, and the Chinese Chinatown being what it is, there are parts of this country that are so in the dark ages in terms of opening their eyes and recognising that we all live together and all accept each other for who and what we are. People can identify themselves as whatever they want, whatever they want, what inanimate object they want, what sex they want, and they don't get the abuse that comes out with racism. So, it's scary that we are in the 21st century and we can do all the things we can do. If we can't, as a race, see that this is wrong and it really has to stop at some point.
I had a thing at home park. I was stood in the Denport end, and I actually heard blatant racism towards a player. The first thing I did was walk down to a steward, alert him. He was removed out of the stadium. And it's the more of us that do it, that will help, because people looked at me and I could see their mates were looking at me, and I'm a big guy, right? I'm not one that you're gonna literally walk up to and try and have a fight with, because you'll probably get put on your ass. I'm not a violent guy, but if I have to, you're going to be on your backside and you're gonna not want to deal with it. And they were looking at me and I was just like, what? He was being racist. What was I meant to do? And the more of us to do it. But as you said, in some grounds you probably get your head kicked in. I'm lucky that at home park we have a very inviting atmosphere. We're a family chartered club where we've won the family award for one of the best clubs and all of that in England. And I'm lucky that I've been brought into such an amazing club that doesn't have many of these issues. But when we do have this issue, we make sure we deal with it. And that's the probably the good thing with a smaller club, is because they are able to deal with that issue, because you are known. Most of the stewards knew me by first name because I was always there, and you have a chat with a steward, and that's the beauty of supporting a team in Leagues 1 or 2, is because you are well known and people do know you. And I think I don't know how it would happen in a place like Anfield or the Emirates or Old Trafford, but especially at a place like Home Park, it is not easy, but it's easier to handle, especially with the fact that the club is so welcoming and so not maybe diverse, but we do have a lot of black players. Like it's quite amazing how many we have. I think it's almost like 50% to 60% of our players are BAME players. Like it's brilliant to be a part of and see that, because we all probably have a favorite player, and I bet you've probably seen a black player that you're like, oh, I really like him. And I bet a racist person, let's take Marcus Rashford as an example, right? You're a United fan and you're racist, right? And let's say you're in a Champions League final. Marcus Rashford is running down the wing at the 90th minute. He scores you a winner, right? Are you jumping up and down celebrating that? Yet, when that same person makes a mistake, you're going to go on Twitter and call him a monkey and be racist towards him. I mean, it's remarkable that if they do something good, oh, we'll cheer you, you're one of us. But when they do something bad and something wrong, or make a mistake like Twanzebe did, yet they're going to get racially abused. It makes zero sense.
Yeah, I think building on from that, one of the things I seem to harp back to a lot in regards to discrimination is the issue with Islamophobia, especially around footballers, around the Muslims, and how I can only go from the study that was conducted with Liverpool and Mo Salah, how the fact that we had a Muslim player perform so well that Islamophobia went down. I dread to think what would happen if he weren't performing well.
Yeah,
I saw that on the documentary.
Yeah, I mean, obviously touching on all this, like sort of what football clubs have done. Obviously, me being born and raised in Manchester, and obviously seeing United and City especially, they're doing a phenomenal job for their community to kind of combat this. And I know it goes against everything that's happened recently, but guess what? This is what United and City both, especially when the Qatar owners came in, have both together been trying to combat. Because in school, when I was we had United come in, and we've always had a partnership with United, being literally like 10 minutes away from the school, and the primary school I went to was about 20-30 minutes away. So obviously that being the reason why we were more sponsored with United. And they had this thing called Manchester United Foundation and Kick It Out, and they had every sort of Friday, Saturday evenings they had football on, where there potentially could be like a Michael Carrick coming, or a Vidic coming, or a Rio Ferdinand coming to watch you play. And it really brought a lot of people together, like people who were part of gangs and, like, knife crime and all sorts of different backgrounds together. And the problem that I have is, like, where I used to live, we never had any sort of community like parties or like street parties or anything like that, no get-togethers as a community. But then when I moved to where I live now, obviously, this is prior to COVID. Obviously, with COVID, it does make things a little bit harder to do. But we've got like alleyway parties where we do a cleanup together. We've got street parties where there's a bouncy castle for like kids who live there. And then obviously everyone kind of cooks food, and it's so multicultural. There's white people, black people, Asian people, all sorts of people with different types of food, and everyone's engaging. There's not a single person who's like, oh yeah, fuck that, that's curry that's made by an Asian. Nah, forget that, and there's none of that. And it's about communities. As much as we say the Prime Minister needs to do it, I feel like communities need to come together as well, and really try to bring people together. But the problem that we have is communities tend to be racist together, and then you've got those communities that are multicultural, and then there's people who just keep themselves to themselves, and that's where the issue is. It's a demographic issue as well. And obviously, like, what I am going to ask everyone is, like, what can be done? Because there's so many clubs out there actually trying to do something, and we have to recognize that they are trying, but the problem is too big for them to individually do it, and it actually needs to come together in a central place and for something big to happen.
Souls, do you mind, just because I have to shoot off in a minute, so could I just go first on that question?
100%, right? Yeah, you go.
So in terms of, sorry, I just want to build on what you said about communities need to come in together. I think that is one thing that absolutely needs to happen. There needs to be more initiatives from the football club, but also on our level and what we can do. But unfortunately, I don't know if it's like this for other people, but let's say where I live, I used to know all of my next door neighbors. Now I only know 5 out of, the 50 doors. And it seems like communities are becoming less and less, together. But in terms of the question you asked about stopping racism, I'm just going to say I'm not smart enough to give you an answer, because I can genuinely tell you, if I could give you an answer, then the question would have been answered, when the problem initially began. And I just think we need to see action on many fronts. I think we need to see some action on the pitch. I'd love to see players taking the step, and I'd love to see not just the fans taking that step, but the fans encouraging them to. Because I think if a player was to do it, maybe only 60 or 70% of the fans would really back them in doing so, because you know what the responses can be like. But I'd love to see the fans, I'd love to see the club really back in the process, where if the teams would love to, if they want to walk off the pitch, then they can, and they'll be 100% backed, and the Premier League won't discourage it, or they won't take away any points. The game will be replayed, and I'd like to see that. I think this is a question that doesn't just apply to football; it applies to all types of harassment, and in all different walks of life. And although we might not be able, like for us 5, to stop it in a sense, we can obviously do our bit. But although we can't solve the issue, I think discussions like this definitely help the overall cause in really kind of changing the way we think and bringing about some awareness, at least, to the issues that millions of people have throughout our country. So I think, thank you, Souls, for having that discussion, and obviously thank you for letting me be a part of it, and thank you to the other panelists for supporting all of the people out there who do suffer every day and who have been abused racially, really. So obviously I think a round of applause to everyone who come on to speak about this.
Well, thank you for coming on. I know you've got to go. But thank you very much for
No,
partaking.
thank you, and I'll speak to everyone soon anyway. So see you later, guys.
See you later.
Bye.
Yeah, so another thing that I did want to talk about, because obviously we have talked quite heavily on racism, but there was another sector that I wanted to kind of get people's opinions on, especially in the last sort of, I'd say, few days with this Greenwood situation. If people aren't aware, what happened was this supposedly this girl or a transsexual woman, or I'm not. The fact is, it's rumors behind it all, and this sort of think about even like gay football, like they're not even gay, like even like they're not gay and they're still being abused for doing a few things that maybe aren't your typical straight male behavior, and the abuse that Greenwood got for an unconfirmed rumor started by someone. And I think that also needs to be highlighted, because I'm not going to just talk about coloured people, because there is a big footballing issue with homophobia and like even the LGBTQ. Because even when the Rainbow Laces came out, I know a lot of people actually had a problem with that and endorsing that kind of thing. Obviously, I'm going to hand it over to the panel to have a talk about that as well.
Yeah, I think one of the issues is I can only speak from what I've known for the past 7 years. I've been through the secondary education, and one of the issues regarding homophobia is that even my own teachers at times would call people gay or fannies for not wanting to do something when it's cold. It's so casual the way homophobia is used, the way it's thrown around, the way people can get called it for stuff that doesn't even relate to it, that it becomes so desensitized that it sort of affects people in a different way. When they see someone actually, being gay and enjoying themselves, they don't see why, because they associate it with something negative.
Yeah.
The thing about this is, I came out when I was 14, and when I was a referee, the abuse I used to get, because I lived in Devon, you're pretty well known, and the abuse I used to get was horrific. And I remember talking to my mentor, my FA registered mentor, and he went, "There's nothing we can do about it. We could send your mentor if you want. There's nothing we can do." And then you hear the things about all of that, and then you've got Rainbow Laces and people complaining about doing it. It's nice that they have that issue, but it's not nice for people going through that, targeted for that, and they're just kind of. When I was call the game as it is, be done with it. Yeah, I used to get that thrown at me every single time I walked onto a pitch, and the thing is, we question ourselves why there's not a gay footballer. There probably is loads of them. They're not going to come out into the public eye and come out as gay, because to be frankly honest with you, I'm getting abuse on grassroots level. I dread to think the amount of abuse a footballer would get for coming out as gay.
The issue is the last one who came out as gay had to
killed himself,
unfortunately.
Yeah,
that's how bad it is.
The abuse that people would get would be genuinely horrific. And to be fair, so what if Mason Greenwood got with a transsexual? So what if he's gay? Or so what if anyone prefers something different? Guess what? We're all born differently, right? Being gay or lesbian or bi or transgender, that is not something you choose to do, right? People just think, oh, you choose to be that. No, you really don't, right? And for someone going through that issue, that's the most insulting, degrading thing you could potentially ever say to them, because it is the most difficult thing to accept. And I just don't understand why people just feel that they can just abuse someone for something that they have zero control in. And just because they don't fit the norm of society, that does not make them any less more of a person than the next person. and it's just absolutely, it's just disgraceful. And I would like to see the FA or teams or a player be brave enough to deal with that. But I don't honestly think there would be one. Not yet, anyway. Because I dread to think of the chance that they would get, the online abuse they would get, and would they really be supported by their club? Like, well, I'll just take Mason Greenwood's name as an example, but if he did come out as gay, do I think Manchester United are backing him? I couldn't tell you. I think Ollie, the manager, would. I think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer would probably back him. Do I think that the hierarchy above Ollie would do it? I'm not sure. And that's why we're going to continue to have zero gay footballers, because there's no one to support them. And it's a bit like when the first person does it, then more people will come out and deal with it. And it will be more of a spoken subject. But until that first person gathers the strength to do it, we won't see any changes, because it's not because they're weak. It's because the abuse they would get would be absolutely horrific. And as Tom said, the last person that did went and killed himself. It's just like, I don't know how you fix that.
If I look back on my working career, when I left school and went to work in the motor industry, I wasn't aware that anybody I worked with of their sexuality, whether they were homosexual, whether all of the things that you've just said. And to be quite honest with you, I never made it my business to find out, because I've always been brought up to live and let live. If you misdemeanor and you're wrong, that's different. But if you go about your life and you do your life and you do your thing, and I do my thing, then that's cool. You'll live happily ever after type of thing. As the years went on and awareness of people's sexual orientation came out, more and more people. I remember moving to Guildford, down south, going to work for a company, a well-known motor industry company, and I've never worked with so many people who came out and said this is my sexuality, and the awareness grew year on year with regards to that. The same problem exists for homosexuality, for what you sort of relate yourself to, and for racism, and it comes under one topical banner, which is ignorance, because as awareness grows and social media identifies that awareness, it also identifies that we have a major problem with ignorance, and that is the thing. If you don't understand it, don't get involved. Don't follow this. Don't be a sheep and follow everybody else and jump on the bandwagon and give people sexual orientation or whatever we talked about tonight. Don't get on the bandwagon and give those guys abuse. Let them get on with their life and you get on with your life. Ignorance is the key factor in all of the things that we've spoken about tonight.
Yeah, and I think another thing is, like, especially with the sort of give or take year and a half, 2 years that we've had, where let's be honest, right, as much as you can be mentally strong, everyone is mentally suffering because of all these lockdowns and not having the freedom that we're used to having, not being able to go out by will. And for us to think that the first thing that is right to do, and look, we're talking about rumors here. We're not even talking about confirmed people who are, they're never going to come out as gay, because why would they? If rumors are destroying you, imagine when you do officially come out and you are gay. Imagine, we're in a meme culture. People are just going to make meme after meme after meme. And that alone will destroy you, no matter how mentally strong you are, and no matter how good of a support system you have. When you're seeing, especially with a footballer, like I've said before, they've got millions of followers. Not all of them are going to be lovers. There's going to be a lot of them that don't give a crap about people as well. That's just, the way social media has become. And as much as you can support that person, it's about showing love in that situation. And the problem is, you might get one person coming out, and then, like we said, that person killed himself. Do you really think that there's going to be another person following suit? Unless you've got like maybe 4 or 5, maybe 6 people in big major clubs coming out as like, homophobe, homosexual or transsexual or any of that, you're never going to get it, because the support level will not be to the level they need to be able to cope with everything. But obviously on that as well, like, what does anyone like have any suggestions, or does anyone really have anything that can be done realistically? Or, because obviously we've seen taking the knee actually has brought more light to racism than when we didn't take the knee. And it's sad to say that, but it's actually quite true.
I think the things you could do is the report functions on social media. They don't work. Social media companies, I don't care if it takes, I don't know how much out of your pocket. You employ people who sit there and go through each report by hand, so they can make sure that these racist, these sexist, these homophobic abuse, they get dealt with properly. They get dealt with first of all, and then the proper punishment is handed out. Right now, I know someone who received a multitude of abuse on Twitter, and it took 3 weeks for the report to come back, and nothing happened. Because it goes through a bot, and like you said before with the algorithm, it's got flaws. Technology has its flaws. Nothing will beat the human eye when it comes to dealing with these social issues.
That's quite a task to do that, though, isn't it? You know, you look at it. I'm aware that over the years, in terms of counter-terrorism, as an example, there are certain things you can't say over the telephone because there is a trigger that reports certain words and phrases that people use in terrorism. If that's intuitive, then surely some of the social media platforms can identify some of the more aggressive terms, certainly where people really go for it. I mean, as you quite rightly said before, all they'll do is change the terminology and move it on, and that will be associated with racism. But there has to be a way where some of the software that we use can identify, sort of repeat offenders, if you like. Not even repeat offenders per se. So it's the administration of all of this is the one thing that nobody wants to challenge. That's the one thing that is the biggest job of all. We all believe the same things. Everybody in this room said the same things, and I genuinely believe we all have the same outlook on with regards to this. But it's the administration. It's how do you do it? At what cost? Because money will come into it. Who sets the boundaries? Who follows the boundaries? What different religions follow those boundaries and what ones don't? This is a never-ending circle of possible solutions. It's really, really difficult, and homophobia and all of that stuff falls into that as well. It's social media does more damage than it does good. I'm afraid. My dad, bless him, said that the internet will one day be the end of the world, and we laughed at him at the time. But to be brutally honest with you, the things that you see on the internet at the moment, and the comments that are made to each other, fellow human beings, it's beyond vile. It is at a level now where it's kind of people have developed thick skins because it's an easier thing to do, and I think that's where the change has to come.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, for me, obviously, being gay, there was no one when I was younger and going through this that I could look up to, honestly. And because I'm very passionate about football, there's absolutely no one apart from the Villa player that came out after he played, but I wasn't really born and I didn't really know who he was. And I think for the sort of LGBT community, it would require, especially if you're very sport oriented, it would take a sports person, a footballer to come out. But for that footballer to do it, let's say they're an England international, they're going to have the full support of the FA. They're going to have the full support of their board, not just their manager, not just the guys in the changing room. Because I bet you, if there's a gay footballer, their teammates know. Their teammates will know. Then they're not going to have hid it completely. I reckon there will, if there is, I think there's a stat: 1 in every 20 people are either gay, bi, or lesbian, or transgender. So if we take to professional football teams, let's say everyone has about a 25-man squad, that's a minimum of 1 player in every club, and that's just your named squad that is a gay, bi, trans, or lesbian, and their teammates may know, and it won't have really bothered them, because especially of the younger lot, I think they're of that age where they really couldn't care too much about it because it doesn't affect them. But for them to fully actually be on board with the whole coming out thing in the media, on in the most toxic places of all time, social media and the media, they're going to have. I mean, these clubs are going to have thousands of probably doctors and medical people. I know Greenwood went through his whole thing with his mate killing himself, and I don't doubt that United probably sent him to the best mental health doctor or depression or what he probably got the best treatment there is. But there needs to be a change in the clubs where the club would fully support this, and this may come with the younger managers. I think I don't know the managers completely, but I think the older you are, that you probably didn't. Let's say the ones that are sort of 70s, they probably didn't really come across this much when they were sort of younger. So they're probably a little bit more unsure about the whole situation. Whereas someone like Ollie or Frank or Mikel Arteta, they've probably been around this situation. And I think if there was a support of the board, I think something like that would be a huge thing for the LGBT community. But the abuse they'd get would be absolutely horrific, and I'm not sure there's a player out there yet that would be willing to take that abuse.
No.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that's where the primary issue comes in. It's just the support factor, because even clubs can support you, but when you're seeing like, it's like I that's how I've been raised. It's just to live and let live. And I've come across so many people, like Steve was saying, like he obviously when in his first sort of job and then moving forward, he was starting to see more people open up about their sexual orientation. And even when I started working, I came across people who were like transsexual, and then people that are gay, and people who are of different orientations and races and different beliefs as well. And to be honest with you, like some of the conversations and some of the experiences that you share are phenomenal. Like they are genuinely just like anyone else when you actually talk to them. It's just the fact that now that they've chosen a different, let's say, career or like a life path or anything, that we're now all of a sudden going to see them in a different light. It's just sad to see, because if you didn't know that fact about them, how would you look at them as a normal human being? You wouldn't probably even discriminate against them. But the minute you find out that they're gay, they're lesbian, they're transsexual, they're queer, they're whatever else, they may identify themselves as non-gender, non-binary, all with everything that's coming out, and with things like your skin color, like I don't understand why it matters to anyone, like what you're born as, because quite frankly, who the hell cares? Like, for example, on here, what do we share in common? We love football. That's the thing that we've grown to love, and like the passion that we have. Do I really care that any of you are white? Do I care that you're black? Do I care that you're this or you're that, or you come out as gay tomorrow, or you whatever? I couldn't give a shit, to be honest. Not in a way that I'm not going to be there for you, but in a way that I don't care, because it doesn't make a difference to you as a human, because I've gotten to know you without that fact.
It doesn't impact you, right? So my decisions don't impact Saul's or Tom's or Steve's. My decisions have zero impact unless I was to do something ridiculous, and then that's that does impact you. But my decisions alone don't impact someone. And it was so amazing. Well, it was bad amazing. But obviously because I obviously came out when I was reffing. So before I came out, me as a ref, I'll just be called a prick, and I need to go to Specsavers, get some glasses, and learn how to watch a referee, or I've made that decision wrong, or the standard abuse. But then when I came out, the abuse I then got was, oh, you're gay, you don't know how to referee, and I was like, are you sure about that? Because believe it or not, like just because I'm gay and the whole stereotypical of you should like ballet or something, that's not me. I spend most of my days watching football with a bloody beer in my hand. That's if we're gonna go stereotypes, that's not a gay stereotype. That's what I do. I sit in front of my telly, with a beer in my hand, watching the footy, right? But that's my decision, and that's what I'm in. Like, that's what I enjoy doing. But the abuse you get, they then target you because they know you're not of the norm. They then target you, and I just think it's absolutely disgusting the way that people are targeted for stuff that they cannot control. Right? Being gay or from the LGBT community, being black, being Asian, being Muslim, you cannot control these. These are all things you cannot control. Right? I was born gay. And people are born black. People are born Muslim. Mohamed Salah, he's Muslim. Just doesn't take away that he's an amazing footballer. He's a world-class footballer. He's Muslim though. When I hear the name Mohamed Salah, is the first thought in my head that he's Muslim? No, it's not. Is the first thought in my head that he's top goal scorer for Liverpool and has been such an amazing player for them? Yeah. Because I don't look deep down into these things because it doesn't affect me. And Tom's this thing you said about Salah and the Liverpool community, the racism actually decreased. It takes a player being Muslim to be good at his job for racism to come down. It is absolutely remarkable. And I mean, just imagine if a footballer was really good and came out as gay, it might actually decrease that sort of hatred. It's remarkable that you have to be good at football to reduce racism. I mean, if it works, it works, but I don't think we should be relying on that.
All that does is further illustrate society's ignorance. That's all that does.
Yes.
Just really drives home the fact that people are so shallow in their own minds. I worry about what goes on in the four walls of my home and what goes on in the four walls of my family and my close friends' home. Beyond that, those people outside of that have got their own lives to deal with. That, you know, tonight I found out, obviously, you came out as gay. It doesn't change the way I feel about you. We've been on countless things like this together, and it doesn't change anything because I've been brought up to accept people for who and what they are, as long as they don't misdemeanor me or offend me or my family or worse, then we go about your life, mate. And best of luck to you, but that's the problem. There's not enough people in society that have that sort of siege mentality that says we're going through some of the most challenging times as a human race we've ever had right now, and our first thing to do is go and abuse other people. That just says it all. That really encapsulates the state of society today, and you know, racism is just one of a number of things that come under an umbrella of discrimination and abuse, and there really are some toxic people out there, and you do wonder about their mental state, their mental health. Some people take satisfaction in abusing all of those things. I'll never ever understand that, and that's the people that you always struggle to reach out to if you ever find a group of people that are prepared to take this on and to try to change it. Those are the most difficult people to reach.
To enjoy abusing someone is just disgusting.
But it happens. It happens.
I know it happens because it's the whole thing of I've had a bad day, so everyone has a bad day. That's the sort of mentality of these people.
I mean, I have a bad day. I go on FIFA and just start screaming at myself, and that's how I deal with it. I don't go online or go to my neighbor and be like, "Oh, listen, you dickhead," and all of this, and start abusing them and or egging their house or flowering their house or something, stupid. Because that's not how you deal with this stuff.
Yeah, it's like I had a bad day. Ollie was put in very good and not well class. I didn't go and abuse someone on Twitter because of that. I didn't go and make someone's day just as bad as that because someone didn't agree with my level of banter. Like, I directed it at that person and tweeted that they were a Liverpool fan. I dealt with it in the right way. I tweeted that they were a Liverpool fan, something that isn't going to hurt them at the end of the day. I didn't go for a skin colour or a sexuality. I just basically said he's a United fan. Now he's a Liverpool fan now. Like, that's the thing. Like, yeah, that's how I dealt with that situation, and that's the thing. Like, it's just absolutely staggering.
I think the line of banter and abuse and racism is being clouded for a lot of people, and it does come back to because they know they can get away with it, and the problem is, a lot of the people who are sort of racist and abusive, what's the ultimate goal? Let's get as much attention. They don't give a crap whether it's negative, whether it's positive, or whether it's something that actually could make or break their career. Some people genuinely couldn't give a crap. And that's part of the problem. It's like attention seeker is an attention seeker, and you'll get that attention however it's needed. And unfortunately, in today's day and age, if you're racist, you're probably going to get the attention that you so-called want.
Well, they crave it, don't they?
Hence the comments about taking the thing with Prime off the internet so people couldn't go and revisit it. The sensationalism of it, you need to desensationalise it. You need to stop it being something that is there for the public to look at for the wrong reasons. That should be put down and dealt with straight away. And I think, as I said before, at the risk of repeating myself, his network closed in around him and supported him. I think from a platform point of view, that should have been taken out. That shouldn't have been seen.
Oh yeah, he had a lot of support. I mean, I think I messaged him or tweeted about it, and sort of that support and the way the football terrorists dealt with it. I'm not going to say it was the best way of dealing with it, but it certainly, it got the point out there quite clearly that it wasn't going to be tolerated. But I think education's a big thing. I think the FA need to do something. The Premier League, everyone just needs to do something about this, because at the end of the day, nothing's going to change until there's proactive discussions. And I think discussions like these are valuable. They are so important. And there's even more that we haven't discussed, which is sexism. There's so much, because it's there's so much that you can attack someone for. It is absolutely remarkable.
The fact that you've touched on sexism as well, and I know quite a few. I'm not going to name them, obviously, because I don't know how comfortable they are being. But there's a few that I've spoken to, and a few that I've featured on their channels, and they featured on my channel. And even when you talk to them, like, it's heartbreaking, because some of the shit that women get, man, it is borderline probably worse than racism. Like they fucking getting like sort of digitally raped in a way. Like, people are so sexualizing women and like making it so like, oh yeah, let's just sexualize them and let's just go to the kitchen and shit like that. And it's
the Chelsea manager, the women's manager, right? The Chelsea woman manager, right?
Yeah,
she's brilliant at her job, fantastic at her job. And she was in talks to apparently be offered the AFC Wimbledon job. And people are like, could she be in the dressing room when they're getting changed? I mean, if that's the biggest issue that AFC Wimbledon are going to have employing a manager, then guess what? We're on to something there. Because no, she doesn't have to be in there watching them shower. Because to be frankly honest, they're probably not her type. I think she's married the last time I checked. And even if she wasn't, what on earth makes you assume she's going to want to watch that? She's going to be there in a professional capacity as a manager. Her first job is going to be win 3 points on a Saturday. Second job is going to be making sure that those players understand the tactics that they're going to walk out on. It doesn't matter if the person telling you the tactics for your match is a woman or a man or even transgender or anything. It frankly doesn't matter. If they know what they're doing, they know the tactics, they're qualified in that capacity, who the hell cares who it is? As long as they get 3 points every single Saturday, it's fine. Because that is obviously, that's the minimum expectation of any manager in our clubs. Get 3 points on a Saturday, or there's going to be some words to be had. And
but what you're saying there is you're challenging what is deemed to be an unwritten rule, that it can only be men in the men's Wales. That again shows a lack of foresight in terms of, let's really open up, throw the boundaries off and accept everybody for what they are. I've been involved in semi-professional football. I've seen a changing room smashed up because one of my players was racially abused. I've seen a lad take himself off at half time, tell me he's not playing the second half, go home, get a baseball bat and return to the ground. And we're talking to a football ground where people pay to watch and we paid our players. So the level of racism and all the things that we deem to be everyday norm won't stop at giving a woman a manager's job in men's football. You know, that's a really interesting point you made. What would she do when it came to sort of the end of the game? She'd go in her manager's office and the players would get showered and changed. That would happen because that would be the way that the club would choose to deal with it. Do you know what? Really isn't an issue that justifies the column space it got in the newspapers, is it?
Yeah, what would happen is if they won the game, she'd walk into a changing room before they started getting undressed, say, "Well done, boys, you finally did what I asked you to do." Then go and chill in the manager's office and have probably a glass of wine, because that's what. And that's not. I'm not stereotyping a woman drinking wine, because I drink wine. We always heard Fergie would invite a manager in for an expensive bottle of wine or something. It's what managers do, right? They don't tend to crack out a beer for the opposition manager. Although I'm sure there is probably a manager who does that anyway.
Yeah.
But the woman would go in there if they won, say well done. If they lost, she'd go in there, give them a bollocking, tell them what they did wrong, then walk back out, probably even more angry than she was, and then go get a drink and chill with the opposition manager whilst they've just done the same thing. It really makes sense.
I think the bigger problem there, and it again points to everything that we've spoken about today, is put that woman in a man's world, there will be a respect issue. Rightly or wrongly, there will be a respect issue. And that respect issue reaches out as far as racism, reaches out as far as what you sort of categorize yourself as, and it also reaches out to you know, your sexual orientation. So it is, again, it's a perception, and the reality is that it's a perception that that's not normal. The reality is, it is, you know, just deal with it, because that's what we need to start doing. Those things.
It'd be even more horrific if a man came out as gay and was a manager of Liverpool or Manchester United. Do you imagine that? What are they doing in the dressing rooms? To be honest, I'll put it out there. I frankly wouldn't. I wouldn't give a shit. I'll just tell them what I think, and then I'll put it this way: if I've lost a match, I'm going to have a drink after I've bollocked my team. And I'm probably going to be looking at the opposition manager going, "Don't glow." Like, that's the standard, because guess what? You're in work. Like,
it's weird though, because we've got women physios, for example. We've got women doctors who deal with, you know, sensitive situations, should we say, without obviously using, you know, terms. You know, and
you know, deal with a groin strain, for goodness sake.
Exactly.
Like, I'm sorry.
Like, is that not just as, like, what should I say, bad as, like, you know, seeing them shower or something?
That would be absolutely horrific, Sauls, because that. Although, to be fair, I don't know what the stereotype would be. I mean, most women are doctors or something, or I don't know. Like, that'll probably be the next thing they'll get. They'll be like, "Oh no, that's fine because they're a doctor." It makes zero difference. Like, if you're qualified at your job and you know what you're doing and you're good enough for your job, then just do it. Like,
it's that thing where we've accepted that women doctors can deal with sensitive issue with male patients. Yeah. We've not opened and broadened up our mind enough to allow a female football manager to go and be a manager in predominantly a man's world. You know, that's crazy. That very statement there is ridiculous, but it's also very true.
If my chairman, right, we're not getting rid of our manager, he's just signed a new contract, by the way, I love him a bit, but let's say he was to go and Simon Hallett, the chairman, was like, I'm going to interview Hales, I can't remember her first name. I'm going to interview her because I think she's the most qualified person for the job, and she believes what the club, she has the same beliefs and identity as what we as a club want. Right? If Simon Hallett was to then give her the job, Emma Hayes, that's the name, Emma Hayes. If he was to turn around and go, we're employing Emma Hayes as first team manager because she has the same vision as we have and she is as qualified as we can get, I'm all for it. You come in, sit on that, stand on that touchline, and if you do a good job, I'll be happy. And if you don't do a good job, then you may lose your job. But I'm sorry, that's the world of football. But I'm not going to treat her any differently as I treat Ryan Lowe right now. We have a champ for him. we'd probably have a chant for her if she was doing well, because that's the thing. Like, I think it will take that step of a woman making that step into maybe the Championship. There was a lot of talks of she's a Chelsea women's manager, is AFC Wimbledon really the standard she should be going to? Probably not. I think that is a fair point. She probably shouldn't be in the League One. She probably should be Championship.
But that's
Premier
a fair
League.
point. But everything else that gets said is what's wrong.
Well,
Criticizing something is fine. But it's when you start to say all of this sort of, oh yeah, what would happen in the changing rooms and what would happen in this and that is where that line should be drawn.
When I saw it, I didn't even think, oh, I wonder what she's going to do when the boys are getting showered. Like, to be frankly honest, it's not the first thought that's going to come into your head. The first thought that's going to come into your head is, oh, is she good enough? Well, she seems to be quite good at her job. Oh, well, I'm sure she'll be fine if she took it. That's the thought that should be going in your head. Okay, is she tactically aligned with your club? What success has she achieved? What badges has she got? That would be my first thoughts, right? Not, I wonder what she's going to do at full time when the boys are getting showered. That's not what I'm going to be thinking. And I doubt that's what any one of us would be thinking. Because she won't care. I mean, I was a manager, and normally what you did is everyone would sit in the dressing room. The manager would talk for maybe 5 minutes. If you lost, give a bollocking. He probably walks out and does what he wants to do, go for a fag or have a drink or whatever. That's what I did. I mean, I don't know about you, Steve, but that's certainly what I did when I had a job as manager.
But I was quite lucky because I managed at a decent level. And the game I think about, we managed playing in the FA Cup and we lost. And we had a bit of a rant, and then I went and sat in the manager's office when they got changed. There's no reason why a woman manager wouldn't do the same thing. So I think you can get hung up on that. It hasn't happened. She's got an unfinished job to do at Chelsea. You know, it would be nice for her to win the Champions League. I think that's the story, isn't it, with regards to that? But you know, again, we're talking about ignorance, aren't we? The same thing is popping up at the end of every single thing we choose to speak about. It's highlighting people's ignorance.
It was like
how on earth do you take that on? How on earth do you challenge that? How on earth do you solve that problem? You can't, can you?
It was like in the Super Cup when Chelsea took on Liverpool. We had an all-female officiating team. Did they do a good job? I think they did a good job. We have a woman's linesman in the Premier League.
Yeah, Sean Massey, is it? I think it is, isn't it?
Yeah,
she's bloody good at her job.
Yeah, probably one of the best officials in the Premier League.
Yeah, I very rarely see a mistake from her. In fact, I see more mistakes from Mike Dean than I do her.
Yeah.
we have there was in the Vanarama conference. I was watching Yeovil versus, I want to say, Stockport. It's a woman referee. And do you know what? She did the job of a referee, and she did all right. She did a good job. There was no major errors that I could think of. She had the respect of the players, because guess what? She also has a yellow card and a red card, and you don't want to mess with her or anyone when they have that. Because when I had it with Dissent, it was the most booked thing I did. Because at the end of the day, I was paid £20 to go referee a match. I'm not going to get bloody sworn at because you don't agree with my decision. You're going to get booked, and you're going to pay the £30 fine to the, for me, it was the Devon FA. You're going to pay that fine. And you're going to think about what you've done. And if you're stupid enough to do it twice, you're going to meet what's in my back pocket. And you really don't want me to get that out, because that's going to impact your game. And that's the thing, especially in football, these people are paid to do a job. Referees are paid to do a job, right? No matter if they're a woman or a man, they're paid to do the same job, and they're taught in the same way, and they'll do it in the same way. Sean Massey is brilliant at her job, arguably one of the best officials, and I would love, because all assistants are referees at the end of the day, I'd love her at some point to be a referee and to be in the middle. So I bet you we would probably have less bad decisions, because she seems to be very good at her job.
Yeah, even when you touch on that, I played at a Sunday league sort of semi-pro level when I was a lot younger, and yeah, it's some of the stuff that you see, especially the older you get, it really does start to make you question making a career out of football, because especially as someone that's obviously a person of color and not being, the norm of what people used to see. It wasn't so much your own team; it was actually like the oppositions that would target that, and it got ridiculous to the point where they'd probably target you and actually kick you a few times just to, and you'd see that it's targeted at certain people, and it becomes a problem because it's from the grassroots levels going up. But at grassroots, they have really, really stomped that out. Like I said, obviously with you've got the bigger clubs, especially in Manchester, and there's a team called United of Manchester who are kind of a fan-run club that didn't like the fact that Manchester United and City became so corporate, so they kind of made their own team. And even the amount of the amount of work they do for communities as well is brilliant, and that's what we need more of. We need to start not having organizations necessarily, such as like racism against racism organizations coming together. We need communities to come together and to start building something from the foundations of your own community. Because and this is why I made this podcast primarily, because I want to reach out to people and I want to tell people, look, for example, myself, I can start something in Manchester and then someone could see that and be like, you know what? If we started this in, let's say, Liverpool, and let's say we started this in London, and then we started this in Bristol, we started this in like different cities of, England, guess what? That's a united goal. That's how you stop it, because it's as much as, we want like Boris Johnson to take the stand and, stop racism. Why not try and be proactive as a community and as individuals? Because the one thing that I have been seeing a lot more is people standing up to racism. And that's the first step of many to try and negate developing this further. But what I am going to do, obviously, because I don't want to be taking too much of people's times either, is I kind of want to get everyone to kind of wrap up and final thoughts and maybe even like a message to the people kind of thing. And obviously, I'll start off with you, Niall.
Yeah, so my message is quite clear. If you haven't got something nice to say, don't say it, right? Because just because you're in a bad mood or you're unhappy, that doesn't mean that everyone else has to be unhappy. And if you're going through a hard time, you've been discriminated against, my Twitter's there. DM me, and the same with probably anyone that's been on here. Feel free to talk, because this issue only gets solved when we talk about these issues. And the other thing I would say is probably to Twitter and the FA and the government is wake the fuck up, because I am bored of this conversation now. I'm white, and I'm bored and tired of having to fight for equal opportunities for everyone. We're in the year 2021. If people hadn't realized, this shouldn't even be an issue anymore. So if any of them do stumble across Gooner Thoughts, please feel free to try and do something more, and especially you, Twitter, because to be frankly honest, more and more people keep getting racially abused on your platforms, and it's becoming a joke. And I don't care how much it's going to cost you. You're quite a rich company. Deal with it and sort it out, because it needs sorting.
Yeah, and I'll go over to Steve next if you've got any sort of final thoughts or message to the people.
Really, football is an escapism from the real world for many, many people. Let's keep racism out of football. Let's live and let live. Look, if your player plays shit, tell him he's playing shit. Don't call him a monkey or put emojis on the thing to racially abuse people. You're damaging people's mental health. We're in difficult times at the moment where life is tough for us all. And we've all been through lockdown. We're all living in a world that no one could have ever prepared us for. Just like you said before, if you've got nothing nice to say to people, then don't say anything. We all got to look after ourselves. We've all got to do our little bit to get through these difficult situations. Let's not make this more difficult, more aggressive, and more nasty than it has to be. And certainly let's not be ignorant, because ignorance is the key to all of this. Let's stop being ignorant. Let's start being nice to one another, because there's a tough time and it's not fun. And if you're a footballer, an Asian footballer, a black footballer, and you get things wrong, you don't want to go log onto your Twitter account and see yourself being racially abused. At the end of the day, we use football to escape from the rigors of everyday life. Let's use it for that and stop abusing the position we find ourselves in because we have a voice through social media and use it properly. Just use it properly.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. A lot of that I am going to echo as well. And social media has got us closer to footballers than ever before. It's given us the ability to talk to some of our idols, people that we may never see. And what are we doing as a platform? We're racially abusing these people. Do you truly think they're going to want to get out and reach people and do these sort of Q&As and meetups with people when all they're seeing, frankly, and I'm not saying that, it's proper fans or it's just fake people. We don't know. We quite frankly can never know because there's too much protection to these people to ever know whether they're real fans or they're real people even, or they could just be someone with like 5 laptops just, on different accounts. We don't frankly know. And the other thing that I want to say is, look, we don't get to choose our skin color. We don't get to. Religion is a choice, but guess what? When you think something is the truth, you follow it. It's like your football club. You choose it and you follow it regardless of things that go wrong, whether it's relegation battles, whether you've been relegated. Guess what? You stick through it. So the same way when you find love for something, and like Steve said, it's an escape for a lot of people. Like I got into football because my parents split up and stuff, and it was going through, as a child, you go through a lot of things and you do find an escape in things. And that's my escape from the reality of life sometimes. It's just going to football, playing football with your friends, and just having quite frankly, a fucking good time. And for people who find this sort of stuff that we've talked about today offensive, guess what? I couldn't give a shit because you're part of the problem. And I'm going to be honest about it because I don't really care to offend people. Of course, if we've said something that is so damaging, please let us know because we're also people who can make mistakes. We're humans. But that's kind of a message. It's like we've gone from starting 2020 from #BeKind because Caroline Flack committed suicides due to the events that led up to it, to then stealing toilet paper from each other, to then being like, oh yeah, let's take it a step further and start racially abusing people. And then we took it even a step further and started abusing people just for the sake of abusing people. For once in our lives, can we come together as a community and as people and use the platform and technology for the right reasons rather than the wrong? Because that is, quite frankly, is always going to get highlighted. And I feel bad for people who use these platforms for the good of what they are, because there are going to be ignorant people who are going to use it for all the wrong reasons. And what I'm going to say again is what Niall said. Our Twitter handles are on the screen, and if anyone is going through absolutely anything, please reach out to us. I've got more than enough time, for people if they're going through some struggles in life, whether it's to do with the topics we talk about or just you've had enough of life. I'm a student and I've gone through the education system, so even if you want to talk about education and handling the stress of education, there's plenty of YouTubers out there as well who make videos on this. There's plenty of Twitter accounts out there as well if we're not ones who you want to talk to. But guess what? If people think I'm going to get abused from this video and I'm going to stop talking about it, you can think again, because this isn't going to stop me. I'm going to keep going because until we don't solve the problems of the world, I'm a football fan and I want to put football on the map for the right reasons, not for the reasons we're seeing. But, if there are thoughts, obviously do leave them in the comment sections, and we may even do another video depending on kind of questions that come through. And this is another plea to people. If there are people who have gone through things and maybe want a platform to talk on, contact me, contact Niall, contact Steve, and contact N5 who were on before. And there's plenty of other channels who will be more than happy to address these situations head on, because that's what we're here to do. I didn't become a content creator to benefit myself, as much as, the money side of things can be good. And, the fame, it's not all about that for me. I want to bring the topics to, and Niall knows this because he's been on the channel before, and I bring topics up that people don't bring up because guess what? They're quite frankly too scared to bring it up because they're scared of their reputation. And that's not what it's about anymore. It's about us coming together and tackling this issue head on, because if we don't come together, we can forget about unity. We can forget about a united nation. We can forget about everything because it'll crumble from the foundations. We've not built a foundation to build forward. But again, like I said, I don't want to keep anyone holding too long. But thank you very much for.
I'd just like to finish by saying, guys, we've been sat on the pod tonight for the best part of 2 hours, and there have been 5 of us on this pod. I am no better or no worse than the 4 people who appeared in this pod. We are all our own individual people. We have our own individual problems to deal with. Don't judge people by what you see. You don't know us. I don't think myself any better than the two guys who sat in front of me here today. And that's the key. Keep it real and just appreciate the people around you and don't abuse each other. Life's too short, man.
Yeah, I just want to echo that if anything has upset you, and because I don't think anyone said anything outrageous. If you are upset about this, I also echo. I don't care because you are part of the problem. And if you are going to abuse Souls or Steve or myself or Tom and M5, just don't bother. Because to be frankly honest, if you do it to me, I will just let everyone know what you said. Now, I may even post a message of it on my Twitter, so you can then get your little fame, and you also get a ton of people going, no, that's not okay. Then I'll take it down after a couple of days once I've dealt with that. So really, don't go and abuse anyone. And the thing is, if you are sort of coming out or you don't know what you're thinking or any of that, feel free to message me because I've been there. I've got the sticker. I've got the abuse of it. And yeah, we can always chat because talking is always better than any alternative, and that's a fact. Like you can be as low as you are feeling, but talking to someone is always the best way out of any problem, because what you think is a major problem that you can't get out of, someone else might have that advice or that experience to know how to help you. So if you are feeling really low or want to talk, then yeah, just hit my Twitter and we can have a chat.
Yeah, hit any of us up, and then obviously if it's something we particularly probably aren't well versed in, I will try my 100% best to put it out on Twitter and get the right people in touch with you, because that's what we're here to do. Look, we've got to be here for each other, and that is a brilliant message to leave, obviously, the conversation on. Please, if you are going through anything, just talk to someone. You don't understand. Like, sometimes I get, people don't like talking to family or friends because it shows a vulnerability to people you may see every day. You may not see me every day, so it might be easier for you to contact me.
Yeah.
And my DMs are always going to be open, regardless of whether I have one follower to when I get whatever it comes to, because I'm here for the people. If people want and let us know, let Niall know or Steve know if there is a conversation that needs to be happened and you feel it's a big topic that needs to be talked about, I'm quite frankly going to tell you, none of us here give a shit. We'll talk about it. Even if I have to do it alone, I'll talk about it. I couldn't give a shit.
I'll always come on. Come on, because there's no issue that I wouldn't feel comfortable not talking. Like I'll talk about anything. Like I may not, especially about racism. If people hadn't realised, I am a white guy, right? So I personally don't know how it feels to be racially abused, but what I do know is that it's certainly not okay, and that everyone should be treated equally. And I know that because I have a heart and a brain, and I don't see things on skin color or race or sexuality, because none of that cares. The thing is, if you're nice to me, I'll be nice back to you. If you're a dick to me, I'll be a dick back to you. And it is as simple as that. Just be nice. And as Manan said to me, if you haven't got anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Because to be frankly honest, no one needs to hear it.
Yeah. And that's what we're going to end it on, guys. And again, talk to us if you need to. Comment below if there are anything that you... Or privately messages. I know people are going to get stick for leaving things in the comments that want to be talked about. So privately messages, we will definitely get something arranged. A lot of us are here for the people. So thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. If there are any questions, please DM us and we will definitely try and get back to you at some point. But that will be the end of the podcast. But thank you very much for listening, and thank you everyone for getting involved.
Cheers.